I'm Patrick here from Magic 101. Good to see you guys again. We're here today to bring to you our weekly video, and today we're doing a deck tech. Our subject is Modern, and we're doing a mono-white Soldiers deck. I'm Patrick here from Magic 101. Here we go. Alright everybody, I'm Patrick back here from Magic Guild. Here is our deck, and our deck box. It's an Elspeth deck box because, oh, I like Elspeth. So here's Elspeth. Now we're going to take the deck out. Now this deck is a very, it's a budget deck, but it's also a slightly competitive. I don't know. I took it to my game store and I did pretty well at the game store. I beat a bunch of people that had spent far more money than I did. And it's just because of some of the ways the deck is built, which I will show you. But first I'd like to start with the mana base. And it's a very simple mana base. You can customize it with so many things. But I start with 2 New Benalia. So we've got 2 New Benalia there. And New Benalia is a card that says it enters the battlefield tapped, and when it enters the battlefield you scry 1, and it taps for a white. So because this is a mono white, we have so much extra mana lying around that a card like this is just so helpful. Now I only run 2 because I like hitting my 1 mana drops. So I run only 2. Next card we've got is Secluded Step. Now this is a card that, as you can see, came from the dual deck. A lot of cards from this deck are. It's a card that enters the battlefield tapped, and you can tap for a white, and you can cycle it. And that's one of the nice things about this deck. This deck has really no card draw, and sometimes you get land flooded, and this card just gets rid of the land flooding. So we got some of our lands here. And then we run about 18 planes, just basic planes. So I'll stick those here, 4 planes, and 4 more. And 4 more, and 4 more, and 2. So there's our mana base. Just planes and some Secluded Steps and New Benalias. Next, we've got our creatures. And I'd like to start with our 1-drops. So we've got 4 copies of Soldier of the Pantheon. Now this card is from Theros. And it is a 1 mana, 2/1 with protection from multicolored. And whenever an opponent casts a multicolored spell, you gain a life. Now the biggest reason why this guy's in the deck is because he's a 1-drop, but also because he is a human soldier, and this is a soldier tribal. So he fits really well into the mana curve, and he's better than Elite Vanguard, because Elite Vanguard is just a 1 mana, 2/1. So we've got our little soldiers over here. Our next 1-drop we're running 2 of. It's the Iona Javelineers. This is another card from the dual deck, and it's a 1 mana 1/1 that enters the battlefield tapped. When it enters the battlefield, it gets a Javelin counter. You can tap it to remove a Javelin counter to deal 1 damage to target creature or player. Now, when I first started testing out the deck, I really didn't like this card very much, but after some play testing and using it at the tournament itself, it's so valuable. When people throw down things like Vendilion Click and all sorts of little beasties, you can just snipe them. If they throw down a Snapcaster, you can just take it out right away with your Iona Javelineers. Now, it's not the best removal, but it is quite good for the mana cost, and it's a 1 mana 1/1 soldier, so fits nicely into this deck. After that, we've got our 2 mana. We've got 2 of this card. This card is Consul's Lieutenant. It's a card from Origins. It's a 2 mana 2/1 with first strike and renown 1. When it deals combat damage to a player, it gets a +1/+1 counter permanently. Whenever it attacks, if it's renowned, your attacking creatures get +1/+1 till end of turn. This guy's in here for pretty obvious reasons. He pumps all your other soldiers when he attacks. He gets tons and tons of stuff. He's a really just nice and valuable card to have on the battlefield. Next, we have 3 Talia, Guardian of Thraben. Now, Talia is a 2/1 for 2 mana with first strike, and she makes it so that non-creature spells cost 1 more to cast. Now that may not seem very good, but against decks that are heavy in spells, which is most decks in Modern, it's destructive, and it just basically buys you extra turns. Now she is one of the most expensive cards in this deck. She's about $5 each. She might be a little less now, but when I got her she was, and that was a couple months ago. And she is just very valuable. Our next card is this one, Precinct Captains. They are 2 mana, and these are dual white, and they are 2/2s with first strike. Whenever it deals combat damage to a player, you get a 1/1 soldier. So this is one of your engines of your deck, and This is just a great card that if your opponents can't block it, you just get so much value out of it, and it's so annoying to play against. I just love this card. So next we have one of our key cards of our deck, pretty much the key of the deck, and it's Preeminent Captain from the M15 set. Now Preeminent Captain, he's 3 mana for a 2/2 first strike. Whenever he attacks, you may put a soldier from your hand onto the battlefield, tapped and attacking. Now that doesn't seem very good, as we all have low mana cost soldiers, but we do have a soldier that's coming up in a little bit that makes this card good and makes this card valuable in the deck. Our next cards are 2 Banisher Priests. Now you can run more of these and you can run more kill spells, you know, Banishing Lights and things, but sometimes it's just nice to have a 2/2 body when you take out their Tarmogoyf or something similar. They're very fun to use, very versatile, and I mean, you could always run a, I can't remember his name, Fiend Slayer, Fiend Skirmisher, something like that. He's 1/3 that does the same thing, but these are very versatile and you can run either of them. Our next card on the list is Odric, Master Tactician. Now Odric is a fun little card. He's 4 mana for a 3/4 first strike. Whenever he and at least 3 other creatures attack, you may choose which creatures block this combat and how those creatures block. Now because it says which, basically you can decide if creatures block this combat. Now the only reason I'm running one of him is because in Modern generally there aren't super heavy creature decks or, you know, walls that you have to get through. Usually you're the creature deck and your opponents are just playing tons and tons of spells, at least in the store that I play in. Now if you're in a store or an environment where tons and tons of spells are being played, then I would recommend running one. But if you're in a place with more, then I'd recommend running more. So now we're going to slide this over a bit. Fix this. Now for our key card of our deck. And this is a really cheap card, and it was printed originally in M13, I believe. This is the Captain of the Watch. It is a 6 mana, 3/3 Vigilance. Other soldier creatures you control get +1/+1 and have Vigilance. When it enters the battlefield, you get 3/1/1 soldier creature tokens on the battlefield. Now the biggest drawback to this creature is its, mana cost. Its converted mana cost is 6. But if you're running Preeminent Captains, when you attack with a Preeminent Captain, you can put a Captain of the Watch from your hand on the battlefield. It can't even be countered. It is so good in Modern, and it's basically the driving force of this deck. You drop your Preeminent Captains, you attack in, and your Captain of the Watches just, boom, onto the field. All your soldiers get buffed, you get more soldiers. Unless they're playing Blue-Eye Control and they have field wipes, there's really not much that most of these people can do, and it's so nice. Now, the spells of this deck. Sorry, let's start over. Spells of the deck. Here we go. At 1 mana, we're sitting down with these little friends. I'm running 2 Sunlance. Now, the reason I'm running 2 Sunlance is it's 3 damage to target non-white creature for 1 white mana. It's basically a sorcery speed lightning bolt for white. I mean, it's a very good card. If you'd prefer to run things like Banisher Priests or really anything that is creature removal, that's basically what this card is. It's creature removal for low power toughness creatures that you just want to get rid of permanently and you just don't want to deal with. Now, because this is a budget deck, we're not running things like Path to Exile or stuff like that that's just more in the high range of things. So Sunlance kind of fills in for that and kills those low creatures that we just want to get rid of. Move that to the side. Now our next card that I'd like to talk about is one of my favorites in the deck, and it's Brave the Elements. Now Brave the Elements is a great card. For 1 white, gives all your creatures that are white protection from a color of your choice. Now the only reason I'm running 2 of it in this deck is because some decks don't run creature removal, some decks you don't need this card for, and it just sits as dead weight in your hand. Now if you'd like to sideboard 2 more in your sideboard, I would highly recommend that. It's a great card, it gets around all sorts of creature removal, it gets around all sorts of things, and it keeps your pieces of your deck together, and it can be a win condition. Our next card is a pretty obvious one. We're running 4 Raise the Alarm. Now, Raise the Alarm is pretty average. I mean, 2 mana for 2 1/1 white soldiers, and you just stick them on the battlefield at instant speed. Nice thing about this is it can be good, not removal, but sometimes if your opponent's attacking in with something, you can just, instant speed, 2 1/1 white soldiers. It's pretty nice for that, especially if you have your soldiers pumped with something else, of which there are a few ways in this deck to do that. So, I mean, it just gives you more soldiers, and it works well in the deck. Obvious include. We have our final piece here. This is 4 copies of Honor of the Pure. I love this card. It gives all your white creatures +1/+1 for 2 mana, and it's an enchantment. It's a great card to run, and it just fits well in the deck. Fits with the theme, and a lot of times it fits nicely with the mana curve. So now I'd like to talk alternatives to the deck. Now, obviously, you can throw in things like, Path to Exile as substitutes for some of these cards. Now, if you'd like to go a bit more expensive and just, make the deck a little nicer, you can throw in things like Kithian, Hero of Akros. If you have maybe 1 lying around, you might from the new set Origins. He can replace the 1 mana creature, Soldier of the Pantheon, and he just works really well. I mean, he turns into a Planeswalker, for goodness sake. You can replace a number of things with him. The Javelin ears. He just works well in the deck. Another card we have is Brim, King of Oreskos. Now, this guy hasn't seen too much play, but he is a bomb. I mean, modern play at least. He saw a lot in Standard. And he's a 3 mana, 3/4 with Vigilance. When he attacks, you get a 1/1 white cat soldier token onto the battlefield with Vigilance. Now, the nice thing about him is he himself, as you can see, is a soldier. Cat soldier. So he gets the boost from your soldiers. He gets all those things, and he's just an all-around great card. So much value. And if they can't get rid of him, he's just nice to play. That 4 toughness is nice. Now, if you want to go down the more Planeswalker-y route, you could always go with Elspeth Sun's Champion, but she is a bit high in your mana curve. If you want to run maybe 1 or 2, that's up to you. One of my favorites to run is Elspeth Knight Errant. This is the dual deck version here. There's so many versions you can run, and Elspeth Knight Errant is just amazing. +1, you get a 1/1 white soldier creature token, or +1, target creature gets +3/+3 and flying until end of turn. If they can't answer this card, they're going to die. Eventually. I mean, it's pretty quick eventually there. You can bump your soldiers, you can get more soldiers. Her -8 is also, you get an emblem with artifacts, creatures, enchantments, and lands you control are indestructible. Sometimes I won't even activate that ultimate, simply because I'd prefer the value of the +1s. But she's a great card. She's a little more in the high pricey range, but if you want to bling out this deck a bit. Another creature you could put in to replace Thalia, if you don't want to pay the cost for her, is Verwing Mayor. This card is super similar. The only problem is it's not a soldier. It's a Pegasus, but it does have flying. It's a 2/1, and it also costs 1 extra mana. So it's 3 mana for a 2/1, and non-creature spells cost 1 more to cast. So if you need more budget options, you can run this Verwing Mayor, and that brings the cost of the deck down substantially. So we have Verwing Mayor there. Now, if you want to change lands in this deck, or you want to improve lands, you can always run fetch lands. I mean, any land that fetches white lands is great. Basically, the reason for that is just to, thin out your deck a bit, and it just makes it a little easier to get those draws that aren't lands in the late to mid game.